They kicked my gate at midnight and yelled my name like they owned the place. One of them waved a paper and said, HOA order. You're done here. My canine started barking low, deep, the kind that makes grown men pause. I stepped onto my porch and told them to leave. The woman behind them, everyone called her Karen, smiled and said, You don't get a choice. She pointed at my driveway and claimed it was HOA land now. I knew that was a lie, but I stayed calm, because panic is what they wanted. Karen leaned closer and whispered that she had already called the cops. 2 trucks rolled in fast, lights flashing wrong, badges shining too clean. One fake cop tried to grab my arm while the other told me my house was being seized for violations I never heard of. My dog snapped forward and stopped inches from his leg. Silence hit hard. I rested my hand on the old shotgun by the door, not raised, not aimed, just there. Karen laughed and said, Arrest him. That's when I said the line she didn't expect. You're standing on land the county put in my name. Her smile slipped for half a second. One of the thugs whispered that we should go. Karen snapped back, loud, angry, calling me a nobody. She didn't see the small camera blinking under the porch light. She didn't know my neighbor across the road was already on the phone. And she definitely didn't know why I wasn't scared at all. Because when real sirens sound different, you learn to wait. The fake cops pushed again, harder this time. One of them said my dog would be put down if I didn't kneel. That's when my son opened the door behind me, half asleep, holding his school bag like a shield. Karen pointed at him and said, Kids shouldn't be raised by rule breakers. Something broke inside me, but I still didn't move. I slowly told my son to step back and lock the door. My canine stood right in front of me, teeth out, trained, steady, waiting for one word. Karen raised her phone and started recording, telling her followers how she saved the neighborhood. She ordered the fake cops to cuff me. One grabbed my wrist and twisted hard. Pain shot up my arm. I looked him in the eye and quietly said, Last chance. He laughed. That's when headlights washed over the yard and a real patrol car stopped at the gate. The fake cops froze. Karen rolled her eyes and said, Finally, real police. The sheriff stepped out. He didn't look at me first. He looked at Karen, his jaw tightened. Ma'am, he said slowly, why are you trespassing on county-protected land? Karen's face went pale. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. The sheriff then turned to me and nodded once. You okay? I nodded back. The fake cops took a step back, too late to run. And Karen finally understood one thing. She picked the wrong house. The sheriff asked the 2 men for their badges. One handed it over with shaking hands. The sheriff flipped it once and dropped it on the ground. This is fake, he said. Karen jumped in fast, saying they were HOA security, and she had full authority. The sheriff turned his body toward her, slow and cold. HOA doesn't outrank the law, he said. My canine sat beside me, still locked on them. No barking now, just waiting. Karen tried to change the story. She claimed I threatened her, said I waved a weapon, said my dog attacked first. The sheriff didn't argue. He simply pointed up at my porch. Good thing we have cameras, he said. I handed him a small drive from my pocket. His deputy plugged it in right there. Karen's voice filled the night, clear as day, ordering the men to drag me out. Her own words cut her deeper than anything I could say. The sheriff sighed and looked at her. You filed 3 false reports tonight, he said. Karen started crying, loud and fake, saying she was scared. One of the thugs tried to slip away. My dog stood up. He stopped instantly. Red and blue lights filled the road as more units arrived. Neighbors came out with phones. And while Karen was still talking, the cuffs clicked on her wrist first. Karen screamed that this wasn't over, that the HOA board would destroy me. The sheriff didn't even react. He asked me one simple question. Do you want to press charges? I looked at my son watching through the window. My dog still guarding the door, and I said yes. One of the fake cops dropped to his knees, saying Karen paid him cash and promised protection. She shouted at him to shut up, but the damage was done. The sheriff made a call and stepped aside. A few minutes later, another officer arrived with a thick folder. He opened it and read out loud that the HOA never had jurisdiction over my land, and never would. Karen's name showed up again and again, tied to complaints, threats, and fake fines. The crowd started murmuring. Phones were everywhere now. Karen tried to walk away, but an officer stopped her and added another charge. As they led her to the car, she looked back at me and said I ruined her life. I didn't answer. I just stood there, hand on my dog's collar, feeling the night go quiet again. The sheriff leaned close and said, "You protected your family the right way." And I knew this wasn't just about me anymore, because the whole neighborhood just saw what real authority looks like. Karen wasn't even inside the patrol car yet when another twist hit. The sheriff's radio crackled and his face changed. He asked me if I owned the small strip of land near the fence line. I said yes. Bought it years ago, paid every tax. He nodded and turned the radio volume up. Dispatch confirmed it loud enough for everyone to hear. That land Karen claimed for the HOA, it was marked as protected property because of past threats against my family. The crowd went silent. One neighbor stepped forward and said, Karen had been fining people for years. Towing cars, locking garages, others joined in. Stories spilled out fast, angry, messy. Karen started yelling from the back seat, blaming everyone else. The sheriff shut the door on her words. He looked at the people and said, "If she touched your property, come see us tomorrow." That line hit hard. Phones kept recording. Faces changed from fear to relief. Before the cars pulled away, the sheriff shook my hand and said something low, just for me. "Next time, call me sooner." I watched the lights fade down the road. My dog finally relaxed, tail slow, calm. I locked the gate, checked on my son, and stood on my porch a moment longer. I thought it was over. But deep down, I knew Karen's mess was only starting to surface. The next morning felt quiet. Too quiet. I was pouring coffee when a county truck stopped outside my gate. Two officials stepped out, not in a rush, holding papers with stamps all over them. One of them smiled and said Karen's arrest opened a bigger file. Turns out she wasn't just acting tough. She was stealing HOA money, paying thugs, and forging notices. My name was all over her complaints because I was the only one who never paid her fines. By noon, more neighbors came by. Some thanked me. Some apologized for staying silent. One older vet shook my hand and said, "Freedom looks like this." That line stuck. Later that day, the sheriff called again. He said Karen tried to make bail using HOA funds. That move alone added more charges. Her board members were now under investigation, too. Power like hers doesn't fall slowly. It collapses loud. That evening, I walked my K9 along the fence line, the same place those men kicked my gate. The sun was setting, calm, peaceful. I thought about how close it came to going wrong. Then my phone buzzed with one last message from the sheriff. Case just went federal. I looked at my house, my land, my family inside, and smiled. Because some people think control makes them strong, until they meet someone who knows the law better than fear. The news van showed. Up 2 days later. I didn't talk much. I didn't need to. The footage said everything. Karen in cuffs. The fake cops exposed. The lies playing back in her own voice. Reporters kept asking why I stayed so calm that night. I gave them one line and walked away. I didn't work my whole life to be bullied off my own land. That line spread fast. By the end of the week, the HOA board was dissolved. Signs were taken down, fines were canceled. People started parking where they were scared to park before. Kids rode bikes again. My son asked if the bad lady was gone for good. I told him the truth. The law handled her. That mattered. Not revenge, not anger. Just justice done right. One evening, I sat on my porch with my dog at my feet. Shotgun still locked away where it belongs. The flag down the road moved slow in the wind. I thought about how easy it is to judge the wrong person, and how dangerous fake power can be. Karen thought fear made her untouchable. She was wrong. Because in this country, land means something. Truth means something. And when you push too far, the law always pushes back harder. Months later, I got a letter stamped official and heavy. Inside was the final ruling. Karen pled guilty, jail time, fines she could never pay back, and one last line that felt unreal. She was banned from holding any HOA position ever again. I folded the paper and sat there for a long time. No cheering, no smile, just relief. The kind that lets you breathe again. That night, I walked the edge of my land with my son. I showed him the markers in the ground and said, "This is ours because we followed the law, even when others didn't." He nodded like he understood more than his age should allow. My K9 walked ahead of us, calm, proud, like he knew he did his job. The same road where fear once parked now felt normal again. People still tell the story around here. They talk about the HOA lady who thought she ruled everything, and the man who didn't shout, didn't run, didn't break the law. My favorite line is the one strangers repeat when they pass my gate. She judged the wrong person. And every time I hear it, I remember one simple truth. This land, this home, this freedom, you don't beg for it. You stand your ground and let the law speak for you. A year passed, but the lesson stayed fresh. New families moved in, and the rules were clear now. Written by law, not fear. Sometimes people ask me what would have happened if I lost my temper that night. I always give the same answer. Then she would have won. Power feeds on chaos. Calm starves it. Every now and then, a car slows near my gate. Someone reads the small sign I put up after everything ended. It doesn't warn. It doesn't threaten. It just says one line, private property. Protected by law. People nod and drive on. No shouting. No fake authority. Just respect. Karen thought control came from yelling the loudest. She never understood the truth. Real power is knowing who you are, what you own, and when to stand still and let justice walk toward you on its own. Last week, the sheriff stopped by again, not in uniform this time. He brought coffee and stood at the gate like a regular neighbor. He said the case is now used in training, a lesson about fake power and real law. I watched my son play in the yard while my K9 slept in the shade. The same place that once felt under attack now felt solid, untouchable. Before he left, the sheriff looked at my land and said something I won't forget. Most people don't know their rights. That's why bullies get bold. I nodded. Because that night wasn't about being brave or strong. It was about knowing when to stand firm and let the truth do the work. And if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Freedom doesn't shout, it waits. And when someone tries to take it the wrong way, it always answers back the right way. A few days after that, I found something taped to my gate. Not a threat, not a fine, a handwritten note from a neighbor I barely knew. It said, because of you, I stopped being scared. I stood there longer than I needed to. Karen wanted control. What she left behind was courage she never planned for. Life went back to normal in small ways. Trash days, school mornings, quiet nights. But something had changed under the surface. People spoke up now. Questions got asked. Fake power didn't get free space anymore. And every time my dog lifted his head at a sound in the dark, I knew we were safe. Not because of force, but because the truth had already won. That night taught me one thing I'll never forget. When someone comes for your home with lies and noise, you don't need to be louder. You just need to be right. Everything went back to normal, but the fear never came back. Karen lost her power, the HOA lost its grip, and the neighborhood finally breathed again. My land stayed mine, my family stayed safe, and the lesson stayed clear. Fake authority only works until it meets real law. She thought yelling made her strong. She was wrong. Freedom doesn't beg. It stands still and lets justice finish the job.